This is going to be a less than respectable here. Pop out a couple of pounds. It's the weekend, not an ideal time, but you take your opportunities when they come. Oh yeah, I can feel that already. That front's a little grippier. Or I'm very prone to a placebo effect, which is fine with me. So I'm going to talk a little bit about helmets. Right now I'm wearing a showy Crest. It's the first helmet I got as advised by an overpriced boutique store in Los Angeles. I had no experience. I don't have any friends who ride motorcycles. I don't know what I was doing. I'm not saying the Crest is a bad helmet, but the sizing could be questionable, and I didn't really even consider other brands. I just kind of listened to them. What was the safest, and it is, you know, I think in terms of a brand in general, you know, it wasn't misdirected, but they measured my head at around 59 centimeters. It said it was going to cost between a medium and a large. Of course, not knowing anything, I go with the large. And the helmet is pretty loose, you know, it's got a lot of give to it, which doesn't make me the most comfortable. I'd rather not have that helmet moving around in my head, especially with some plans to get out to the track pretty soon. And so anyway, I've been holding off on the purchase because this helmet's, you know, a year and a half old. It isn't very old at all, but I'm sure it was a medium in actual size. I remeasured my head, and I was the third person to do it. I had my fiance do it. She gave me like 58 something. And my measurement was around 57.5 centimeters. And if I took it again and I pulled the tape tighter, it was closer to 57. Which we're starting to get into even small category for helmet sizes. It depends on the manufacturer. But all of a sudden, you know, I'm going from a large down one size and two sizes. I picked up a new helmet in a medium, and because the helmet catered to long oval head shapes, it seemed to fit me pretty well with less pressure on the front. I wound up with that helmet, but then it still had some extra fore aft room. And you know, a helmet should not be incredibly soft and comfortable when you first buy it. It's going to break in a little bit, which I found out with my first one. So that got me worried. What's going to happen in 2 or 3 weeks? So back to the measuring tape. Once again, I'm on the cusp of a little bit over, you know, small sizing. Not taking into account variability between helmets, which is one thing you can't account for. But one thing I wanted to bring up was, if you are putting a helmet on without measuring, that's just wrong, because you have no idea where you stand. You got to use the circumference. Arai has a couple of very good videos out there. One even had Jay Leno in it. But there's a guy that works for Arai that goes around the tracks, and he's fitting people appropriately, and oftentimes he drops helmet sizes. You want it to fit real snug. And I think that measurement will get you in the ballpark. Now, I don't care who it is. A measuring tape, there's a couple of variables here. There's hair length, hair size, whether or not your head is hot or cold, and how much pressure you put on the tape. I've heard some people on the internet talk about, if you don't have a measuring tape, use a string or a shoestring, and then just mark the length on it and run it up to a regular measuring tape, you know, that you use for construction. There's a big problem with that. Most strings, and almost every shoestring, they stretch. And you can expand your size by a couple of centimeters at least by putting more or less pressure on the string, either during the measurement or when you're placing that measurement up to the measured tape. And I don't think many people are accounting for this. It can make a huge difference. It can actually make a difference in a tape that doesn't give a stretch to any appreciable degree, like a tape that a seamstress uses, or a tailor, which is what I used. It's almost like a rubberized plastic kind of material. It's not meant to give, but if you pull it tighter, you're going to get a smaller measurement. So you have to take that into account, which I don't think many people do, and it makes a difference. Thanks, Blake. Just in time for the cool corner. I was just with my fiance's family. Incredibly loving, caring bunch. And before you head out to have some fun like this, which should strike you, if you're normal at least, and I know a lot of you aren't, which is fine, is the risk you're going to be taking, and try to balance that risk so you can come back safely. Because, you know, a lot of people that love you, they're not going to sleep well at night knowing that you're in danger, and it's going to get a lot worse if you actually get hurt. And if you want to get back on your bike after you get hurt, if you survive it. So, be kind to those who are worrisome. A place like this, you go wrong, you get smacked by an oncoming vehicle, you wind up going over a cliff, or you wind up wrapping your leg around one of these guardrails over here. Compound fractures undesirable. And that's one of the better case scenarios. So back on this the helmet topic, I wound up going back in to the store, as I always do. Now they know when I buy something, I'm going to walk back in, getting something that's smaller and fits better the next day. And I grabbed myself a small size. It's a Arai Signet Q for the long oval head shape, which I'm probably more towards that end than round or intermediate oval, because I got a lot of pressure in the front and the back of the head and the mediums that weren't the long oval head shape. And it's a little snug, it's a little uncomfortable at the top, a little pressure in the front, so that's going to break, and then it's probably going to wind up being quite good after that. So, also, you know, I don't like wearing a small helmet. I don't like being microcephalic. But it's a fact, you know? You are what you are, and just because you're not a medium, you're not a, you know, quote-unquote perfect head size, doesn't mean you're inferior. I mean, obviously you're a little nuts if you're riding a motorcycle anyway, so why try to be normal now? But just get the one that fits. Get the one that fits really well and is actually a struggle to get on. You want to be flush. You want to be able to get the helmet over your head. You want the top of the helmet to touch the crown of your head. You want to be buried in there as you should be. But it should feel a little overly snug at first, so that's going to break. I'll put up some pictures. Another issue is dropping helmets. So it's a funny story. I'm at the store and I'm doing the exchange, getting the small helmet, picking it up. I'm at the counter and it struck me, you know what happens when people must drop helmets all the time and they must get sensitive over it. Other people that might purchase it and the store itself. And the employee told me that they send it back, you know, to have the manufacturer do what they have to do with it, whether it be, you know, look it over and make sure it's safe, or just trash it and get another one. That's just from a, you know, waist height drop on the floor. And they're treating these things like they're, you know, like some sort of super delicate processor or something. My personal opinion on dropped helmets from waist level is if your helmet is completely compromised, and that makes a difference in the amount of head injury you sustain if you happen to have to use that helmet for what it's intended for. And that helmet was never up to par in the first place. Now I understand if the head is in that helmet, you know, packing it in there and adding to the force and the weight as it strikes the ground, even from very low speed, yeah, I'd replace it. So I was asking her what she does, and yeah, they gotta send it back. And so she's taking the tags off, those alarms that all expensive things have on them. Right after my comment, and the helmet rolls out of her hand and does a dribble on the ground, on the concrete ground. And now in my head when she's saying to send it back, I'm always like, that's ridiculous, you know. So she immediately said we can get a replacement, I get one shipped in here. And I said no. And there's a little chip on the side of it, very small, about 1 millimeter diameter, just on the side of the helmet in an inconspicuous place. The helmet's on closeout for just over 400 bucks. You know, normal's like $560 or something. And I said to her, don't bother. You know, I'm not going to die with this helmet. You give me 2 or 3 years. If it's wonderful, I'm going to get sick of it. I'm going to want something else in my head. Just give me that helmet. It's fine. And some of you may feel differently. And some of you may know a lot more than myself. Whether you're in the industry or you've, you know, had other experiences, but feel free to chime in. I know a lot of people that spend that much money and something goes to the ground, has a scratch on it. That's it. Game over. And I respect that point of view as well. But long story short, the helmet that I have now is much lighter because the shell size is much smaller, and it physically is lighter just because it's smaller, and it's a different brand. It looks more proportional because it fits my body better, like it should, and it's probably safer. But it took me a year and a half to get there, because I don't think anybody ever really led me through the process of helmet fitting. You know, one of the problems that people are going to encounter from, you know, the sales point of view is you force someone into a small helmet that just doesn't want to wear it, they're going to bring it back. You know, the person has to be happy with it. You can guide them, but they have to make the decision in the end, because it's not a good business model to be pushing people in a direction that they're not comfortable in physically. Because that's going to lead to a lot of returns and your profit's going to suffer. So they really can't push you too hard. You know, the guy that works for Arai is in a special situation. But, you know, your regular Cycle Gear or whatever your local store is, they can't push you. They can guide you to the right place and hope that you make the right decision. But that shit is in the road. Don't like irregularities. Helmet's getting all fogged up. Shield's getting colder on the outside. Breath's getting hotter on the inside. Condensation recipe.